takes the cost of acquiring and retaining from an expense to an investment.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that
Now
too.
we're talking about
100.
Welcome to the Golden Group Neo Marketing Podcast, a bi-weekly discussion of best practices, latest trends, and modern techniques for professional business communication, including advertising, marketing, digital channels, social media, public relations, and alternative options.
Good morning, Kyle.
Hey there, Pritch. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. Still vertical after all this time.
Welcome to 2022.
2022, absolutely. The Neo Marketing Podcast continues to roll on.
We're back.
Right. And since this is going to air in the beginning of 22, right? The very
January,
beginning.
Yeah.
We're going to take that newness and pitch something that's old.
We're going back.
We're going back.
So
We're
we
pulling one out of the archives, my friend.
So we can go forward.
So we can go forward, exactly. The subject is lifetime value.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah.
Great topic.
It's a marketing topic, but we've been talking about on the side. I'd like to explore it a little more in terms of public relations. But, you know, my dad was a marketing guy, advertising guy forever. Retired after 35 years as Senior Vice President of Marketing for Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association.
The original Don Draper.
Yeah, exactly.
He was a madman back when they were real madmen.
Back when they were real madmen, exactly. So anyway, he took this concept and is credited with, along with his co-author, with being one of the first to apply it to associations. But I think there's a lot of meat in here that can be adopted to not just a membership organization, but any organization.
Certainly.
Right?
And I also find some irony in the lifetime value of this concept of lifetime value.
Right. Right.
This article has shown its lifetime value because it is still relevant in 2022.
From the late 80s
There you go.
to 2020.
There you
Here
go.
we go.
You guys can do the math on that. But this is lifetime value of your work. It continues on way past retiring and moving on to something else.
Exactly so. So I'm going to try and do it justice.
Okay.
All right. The first principle is pretty simple and very evident, right? The longer a member stays a member, the more dues income he or she will produce.
That makes sense.
And the longer the affiliation, the more opportunity they have to participate in other value adds offered by the organization. So that's a membership model.
Right.
But I think it easily translates to the more you keep a customer engaged, right? Not only are you reducing the amount of time, resources, energy, and money, which is a resource, but has to be called out.
For sure.
To get a new member, keeping your customer, keeping your old customers engaged is money well spent.
It's relationship, not transaction.
Absolutely.
That simple, right?
But when your marketing department goes for that budget,
Sure.
right, and sure they get a big budget mostly. When public relations tries to go for budget, when sales tries to go for budget, if you don't know what it's costing you to get a new member,
right? Acquisition cost,
absolutely, and retention costs,
for sure.
Then
retention and acquisition value,
absolutely,
right? Which is of course what we're talking about here today.
So
you have to understand all of that in order to budget accordingly and plan and attack, essentially.
And to make the case for the amount of money that you're asking for. In the article that Dad wrote, it was I love this because it takes the cost of acquiring and retaining from an expense to an investment.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that
now
too.
Now we're talking about
100.
100. Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
I definitely appreciate that concept.
Yeah. So, and because otherwise what happens is the budget gets slashed.
Right.
Almost always, right?
I've had those conversations over and over again about how budgets get slashed in marketing departments. Sometimes the whole marketing department gets shut down, right? Because you're costing too much money,
right?
Which, of course, is a ridiculous idea. You got to spend money to make money. You do have to reinvest. And so the concept of investment, long-term investment, and measuring it that way, not literally, we spent $1 today, where's my sale today?
Right.
Transactional attitudes.
Right.
All of that needs to change in order
right.
to build and capitalize upon lifetime value.
Well, and we've talked before about how difficult it is to put a value on a relationship.
Right. It's very hard to quantify.
And public relations has struggled with trying to measure this and evaluate this. But I'm going to start pushing. I think we need to take another look at this lifetime value concept as an investment, as something that you can measure. Because your budget, if I could talk, it'd be dangerous. Your financial department's got to play ball with you because they've got to give you some numbers. Right?
That's true.
They got to tell you how much it costs to acquire a member, how much money you're putting into retaining that member. And
it's not the simple stuff. Sometimes, especially with associations or organizations that do very regular things,
right?
Like, we're members of the local Venture Forum. They have monthly meetings. There's hard costs. There's the room and the AV and the food and if you pay your speaker or not and the salary of the executive director. There's all this stuff that goes into known costs that then everyone wants to break it down between, we have 9 meetings. Let's divide everything by 9,
right.
Which is fine. It's a starting place. It's very simple, but you definitely must go deeper, and better use of the data available to you in order to understand the process better. The better you understand it, the better that you can master it.
Well, and the other thing that lifetime value does for you, as Dad pointed out in his article, is it helps you evaluate your programs.
Yes.
Helps you evaluate your offerings, right?
You know how you're doing things the right way? You retain members or customers, repeat business.
Right.
Repeat business is the greatest economic indicator as to you're doing things right, you're on the right track.
Absolutely.
Marketing can present any kind of message, image, anything that draws someone to the original product, service, or membership in an organization. But the actual execution, the product, the service, the membership, has to provide the value expected by the person who writes you the check, essentially.
Yeah.
And if you do that, you can retain. If you don't do that, no matter how much marketing or sales or effort you put into anything else, if you can't deliver on the value proposition, you won't retain.
Right, exactly. And Dad pointed out that even small programs can be extremely valuable.
Yes.
And this helps you evaluate, maybe this is the reason that your customers are staying. It costs X amount of money, right? But it's still a valuable program, even though the numbers may be small.
Sure.
So there is a real
if the importance is high,
if
the impact is high, then the value of it to you has to be high.
Right.
Yeah.
And it regardless of the size of the segment. But I think this is a great way to measure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
AOPA was losing members big time, as many current membership organizations are to this day. And so they had a couple of alternatives, and one of them, of course, and this is what even PRSA started talking about, and that is raise dues. Well, there's a finite limit to how much you can raise dues.
And sometimes the simplest solution, the obvious solution, is also the worst solution.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's simple. We'll just raise our dues, right?
Just raise our dues,
right.
But you're putting the onus back on your members to carry the weight without exploring all of the other potentials to be in a partnership with them. This goes back to relationship versus transactional.
Yeah.
Transaction's easy. Cost more, raise the cost.
Right. And
that's super transactional.
What's the net balance, right? You raise dues, people are going to jump.
People. You're going to lose people.
Right? And so you're making a little bit more money, but what's the net?
And probably one of the hardest to figure out things in the world is pricing, right? If you do 10% this way, you increase sales, but you lose that 10%. You do 20% this way, whether it's too high, too low. What did you lose in potential sales versus what did you retain versus what's your profit margin per? And it's absolutely different for every single product service that you could put a formula on.
Yep.
But it is the hardest are we leaving money on the table, or are we pushing potential members away or potential consumers away? It's very hard to figure out, which is why the value of retention is so important, because it's a struggle on the attraction side. But if you're transactional in your keeping members and not relationship based, then you take the easy way out, you raise the price, and then you lose members. If you're relationship focused, if you're thinking about how do we do this in partnership with our members, then that easy answer, raise the price, is probably not where you land.
Well, and it forces you to look at other non-dues revenue in a membership organization, but maybe there are value adds that you can provide in a consumer-based organization, right? And I think that's particularly important right now. Inflation's going up, prices are going to increase,
costs are going up.
So as an organization, as a business, if you've got the capacity, if you have something that will help you figure out what the net's going to be, then I think you're in a lot stronger position in the marketplace.
I'm a huge fan of value add. I love value add because it goes to the deepening of a relationship, and that the better a relationship you have with the consumer, the repeatable avenue, the chance for repeatable business, and then again expanding on into recommendations and brand evangelism, and at the end of the day, word of mouth and personal trust is more important and more impactful than any marketing program you could have.
And the key to retention.
Right, exactly.
Absolutely the key to retention.
For sure.
So I thought I'd pull this out of the archive and have a brief discussion about it. Maybe we can drill down into it later. One of the things that Dad pointed out, this was to be a sidebar in a case study book that I was co-editing with a couple of other colleagues. I don't think it made it, but as he pointed out, this was before he passed, so 2012-ish. His article doesn't account for anything today.
Right.
Like social media, websites.
But still tactics.
Yeah.
And going back to the philosophy, the strategy, the approach of lifetime value and the value of it to your organization, and going back to separating them and how you balance them, all of that thought process is way before we get into the tactical, right? But I think what we just talked about with value add, those tactics, those tools that are available to us today that weren't available then and definitely weren't available the day the article was written, are definitely heavy on value add.
Right.
Low cost, high impact, front of mind, all those things that work really well with social media and other digital tools, that if your philosophy is lifetime value, if your philosophy is relationship based, then do we put the time and effort and maybe even a little bit of economics behind things like social media and our digital tools, they're going to pay off because they come from the right place as opposed to being reactionary or transactional. Right.
And I bring it up because I think this is a challenge for today's business, and we like to challenge our audience.
For sure.
So I would suggest this as a framework, and for anybody interested in exploring it as a framework, now you've got some other things that you need to add to the mix.
You always have to adapt it to your business and what you're doing, but then you have to understand the time we're in. 2022, like you said, COVID is still a thing. Inflation is happening. Politics all around. Who knows what comes next in the world? And it's a global economy, right? So something could happen around the world that affects your business today. But if you continue to look inward to your current membership, your current customers, your base, the people that you already have relationships with, the ability to make the changes necessary, to adapt, pivot, to be informed, because you can ask them specific questions and let the membership guide you, as opposed to going back to, we'll just raise the price. Like we forced them down our path. Every conversation we have on this podcast is about, you can't force people to do what they don't want to do. You have to find a middle ground and commonality to bring them along. Lifetime value is absolutely that concept. And because of the profitability factor we also were talked about earlier. It becomes more and more profitable the longer you retain them. It's worth doing, and you might be able to save your business when new customer acquisition is sky high because of all those other factors by retention and developing from within out.
Well, you need to throw a flag on me because I forgot one of the most important things that we talk about this all the time. This is all based on research.
There you go.
The first thing you got to do
everything starts with research.
Is find out what's valuable to your clients.
That's right. So let's clarify, because some people might hear research and they simply think of an academic, go look in the archives, go do your online searches, like just looking at data and numbers, hard numbers. But research also absolutely is talking to people.
Absolutely. Focus groups is one of the main
things.
The
closer they are to the actual thing, whether it's a product, service, or the membership, your members and why they pay every year for their membership, or why someone buys your product, someone who puts their hard-earned money down is the best resource for information about how to retain them and then attract the next person who is very similar to them for the same reasons.
Right.
That data mine of your members who you already have a relationship with is a phenomenal resource for research.
Absolutely.
So don't be intimidated by the term research.
Shame on me for not mentioning that first.
Well, we're going to emphasize it last because it is that important.
Yeah.
Every bit of this process, every bit of running a solid business, of developing membership, of acquiring and retaining consumers, and all of that is based on your ability to learn through the process.
Absolutely. And to learn through your customers.
Yes.
Absolutely. It's the relationship.
You can't set it in concrete and leave it alone for the next 40 years.
Nope.
It has to be flexible. And that flex comes from the relationships, the conversations, the asking people, why do you continue to participate? That's the greatest question, and those answers are the greatest fuel for your organization to be profitable and sustainable. Because remember, too, another thing we talk about on this podcast a lot, too, profit is not a bad thing.
Nope.
Profit is essential. If you want to be a sustainable organization, if you want to get through the dip of COVID or what's happening with inflation now or anything else like that, you have to have profits in the bank in order to survive, whether it's something that's affecting you from the outside or something that's affecting you from the inside. That profitability comes from being smart and listening to your consumer. And if your consumers are members whose buy-in is even deeper than a transactional process, what they tell you. If you do your research, ask them what's valuable to them, ask them what's important to them, ask them what impacts them, ask them what retains them, and then act upon what they tell you. Do your research and then make your adjustments based on that.
And the numbers that you get back.
You can't go wrong if you're willing to go at it like that.
Absolutely. A little bit more work maybe, but a lot more solid foundation.
But the value back to you is so high.
Or absolutely.
You could just guess at it and see how that goes. You guys got money to burn? If you got money to burn,
call me.
Make it up as you go. But if you don't have money to burn, if you want to do things in the right way, if you want to build something sustainable and successful for a long period of time, then you have to understand the process and you have to continually learn in the process. And that's what, whenever we say research on this podcast, that's what we mean. It's not just hard numbers and hard data and math and spreadsheets.
We're not going to ask you to make an academic paper and get it published.
It's not just that. But those are factors. But talking to people who are either your consumer or most likely to be your consumer and understanding the people behind the business is super, super, super essential to
every step of the way.
100.
Anyway, we'll put the link to this article, and there's another one that we should share as well. But, in the meantime, tell us what you think. Give us some feedback. Mash that subscribe button. Hit the bell. We want to hear you, and we welcome your comments. And heck, if you're an expert in lifetime value, we want you on the show. So reach out. Until next time, ciao.
Good luck.
This has been the Golden Group Neo Marketing Podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Tell a friend, leave a review, and engage with us on social media. Thanks for listening.